As teachers, we want to design effective lessons which give our students a quality learning experience. Quality learning happens when your students see relevance in their learning, are actively engaged in their learning experience, and are able to transfer their knowledge and skills. In order to design effective lessons for quality learning, it is important to select and sequence content purposefully such that it broadens and deepens your students' learning. This helps your students to learn the content in a way that brings stronger conceptual understanding and meaning to their learning. How can we select and sequence content to provide a quality learning experience? In this video, we will share 3 guidelines when selecting and sequencing content for an effective lesson. Guideline 1. Determine the role of the content in the learning experience. Consider how the content would support your students' understanding of key knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values, as well as the learning experiences that are required for the student learning outcomes to be attained. This would involve selecting content that is developmentally appropriate and which caters to your students' readiness levels, learning needs, and interests. Here's an example which demonstrates how a teacher may cater to the readiness levels of his students. A mathematics teacher who wants to teach ratio to primary 5 students must first check if students have knowledge of the prerequisite skills of finding equivalent fractions and common factors, as well as solving problems involving the 4 operations that were taught at earlier primary levels. If they don't, this prerequisite knowledge would need to be included as part of the content to be learnt for students who lack the knowledge. When addressing learning needs and interest, it is important to avoid giving examples that are too abstract for your students' developmental level. Instead, give examples that are appropriate for your students. Guideline 2. Leverage subject disciplinarity to facilitate students' learning. You need to have deep knowledge and a clear understanding of the key concepts, principles, big ideas, skills, and modes of inquiry for the subject and their applications in real-life contexts. This guides you in selecting the content required for the learning experience and also paves the way for knowledge to be transferred to other ideas, subjects, and real-life contexts. You could refer to your subject's teaching and learning guide to be clear about the purpose of the content you select and how students should interact with it in your lesson. Guideline 3. Sequence the content according to the subject disciplinarity to facilitate conceptual understanding. Depending on the subject disciplinarity, content can be sequenced based on any one of or a combination of the following 3 perspectives. For the learner-related perspective, consider your learner's prior experiences, learning needs, readiness levels, and interests when sequencing content. The ordering of the content should be logical to your students and help them broaden and deepen content mastery. For example, when teaching mathematics to lower primary students who are not used to abstract concepts, it is more effective to start with concrete objects and then move on to pictorial representations before using abstract representations. For the world-related perspective, you can sequence the content such that it is consistent with how the real world is experienced. For example, in history, you can sequence the content to teach students about the lessons learned from the Maria Hertog riots of 1950 and the race riots of 1964, before using these to understand the efforts taken to promote racial harmony today. For the concept-related perspective, you can sequence the content to show relationships between concepts. Presenting concepts in a series of interrelated steps with a particular order allows new concepts to be built on previous ones. For example, in secondary level social studies, the concept of a person's identity is taught before students learn about diversity, so that they can appreciate why and how cultural diversity is to be regarded sensitively, since it reflects who a person is. Regardless of the perspectives taken, sequence the content with the aim of helping your students to arrive at a better understanding and appreciation of the subject disciplinarity. Not sequencing content carefully could lead your students to develop a misconception of the disciplinarity, which could hinder their learning progress. In summary, organizing content according to the subject disciplinarity is key to facilitating conceptual understanding in your students. They will also allow you to cater to their learning needs, readiness levels, and interests. Students can then make meaning of their learning by making connections with their prior knowledge, achieve stronger conceptual understanding, and apply their learning across topics, subjects, and contexts. With the 3 guidelines that you have learnt from this video, you are now ready to select and sequence content to provide your students with a quality learning experience.